Hey guys, thanks for checking out this clip of Anatomy of the Church and State. Be sure to catch the full episode on Rumble or ChristiansForLiberty.com. Links are in the show description. You grew up in Vietnam, as you had just mentioned. You served in Vietnam. There was a lot of strife going on in the country, as you had mentioned, a lot of protesters who didn't really, care for the military and kind of treated you guys pretty badly. What similarities and differences do you see between what was going on then and what's happening in our country today?
It's different but similar, because the underlying issue there, way back in Vietnam, the media had, they didn't want us there. They didn't want us to win. And, I remember when I came home, when my brother and I both came home from our first two tours, and you're watching the news and you're thinking, wait a minute, that's not what I just came home from. That's not what, I had a t-shirt years ago that says we were winning when I left. And, in reality, we were. And of course, we'll talk later, but, I had been going back for a number of years. When I was taken off on that plane, and when that plane left Da Nang to bring me back to the States, I never wanted to see Vietnam again. That's the last place, the pain, the suffering, the memories, I never wanted to see it. But the media distorted what we saw. Now, no war is good. Ask those that fought in it. But what we were seeing was a distorted picture, and that affected the perspective that many people had, about the Vietnam War. And so, I mean, after my twin brother stayed in. He got a Navy Cross. Well, he was recommended for a Congressional Medal of Honor because he threw himself on a grenade that hit him in the back, rolled in a bunker just come out of where 5 of his Marines were, and he turned and threw himself down on it to save his fellow Marines. I mean, it wasn't something he thought about. It was like in our conversation, he said, "Hey, Raj, if I ever get a chance to jump on a grenade, I'm going to do it." I mean, it's just instinct. Scripture says, "Greater love hath no man in this than lay down his life for a friend." And so he didn't get killed, he was very heavy. It didn't go off. And the demolition people looked at it and said it was still alive. I mean, they don't know why it didn't go off, but God, we know that now. And so he, because he didn't get killed, there were so many acts of heroism like that instead of the Congressional, he got the Navy Cross, second highest award you get, and he got commissioned. And so, but after Vietnam, the military went through, as it always does, World War II, we always, we build up and then we kind of undo everything that we've done and prepared for. And so, so then when 9/11 came, patriotism and I think under Ronald Reagan, there was a new sense of patriotism, when Ronald Reagan became president. Jimmy Carter had the affair in Iran. They took the embassy hostage. Our rescue attempt just was a disaster. And here's the president begging the Ayatollah to let our people go. And, and we were weak. And Reagan brought back that sense of pride in America. With, I believe, a spiritual component. He seemed to be a man that had a strong faith. And so then after that, we got into where kind of a disdain for the military until 9/11. And I think there was a fresh sense of patriotism and stuff. And it's interesting because the media continued that undermining of, the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, body counts constantly and yet, I counsel a lot of veterans. I have a lot of friends that are Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom veterans. And, they serve with pride. They serve with valor and courage. I've met warriors that have been grievously, what I went through was nothing compared to some of the men and women that I've met, in recent years and counseled and befriended. They had a love for country that no matter what the media distorted, it was solid. Now we're back to where, who wants to join the military? I mean, I have to be real honest. I tell people that thinking about joining the military, why don't you maybe go to community college for a couple years, just and kind of think about it, in the hope that we can redeem this. But, there's such we want to rid the military of racism. That was all public. The Secretary of Defense shut everything down to find that those two or three, neo-Nazis. And you may know this, recently a report come out. Guess what? We didn't find it, and that was buried somewhere back on page 52 of whatever paper. And so, the media's had a great influence. In fact, just a real quick story. I was sitting with a general, a former North Vietnamese general, and he told me, he said, we knew we could never win the war militarily, but we watched the anti-war movement, people like Jane Fonda and the others, the other insignificant person who, his name falls out of my head, and I'm not even going to try to remember it. But those kind of people that had the news media, they said they were just kind of like useful idiots. And they knew that if the anti-war movement in America continued to grow and people, the public, would be discouraged by what was happening, they knew that if they would pay the price in their blood treasure, over 1 million, communist soldiers died, that they would eventually win. We would walk away. And that's exactly what we didn't lose. We just kind of took our stuff and went home.
Right.
And then, of course, a Democratic Congress. And this is another thing a lot of people don't understand, Jeremiah. We basically, as we were negotiating the Paris peace talks, which John Kerry, still in the military, went to Paris and met with the communist delegation, which in my definition, a lot of veterans, is treason. There was this attitude, but we were drawing back our forces because we had trained the South Vietnamese Army, the South Vietnamese Marines, their effort. We had trained them, and they were standing up to the North Vietnamese, going toe to toe with them and winning. And most people, unless you have an understanding of the history of the Vietnam War, don't know that. When the Tet Offensive came in 1968, Walter Cronkite gave them a victory when in reality it was a total disaster and a loss. And Walter Cronkite looked at the American public, the father of the news, and said, "We've lost the war." And that's from there on. But they were still, if we would have provided them the materials like we're doing in Ukraine, Vietnam would still be a free country today. And because they were going toe to toe, but all they were asking for was equipment. And our Democratic Congress just, I say this: warriors win the battles and politicians lose the war.